like to toot my own horn, and I know that I'm setting myself up for probably disappointment later tonight, but I hope you were with us last week on the Final Five, because we almost swept the board. We had 2 out of 3 on the power play points with Reinhart and Matthews. We hit the goal scorer line A. We hit the side with Washington. We hit the total with the over in Toronto and Buffalo. So we had a really good Final Five last week, and I'm hoping that we can now ride that wave.
Only on SportsGrid.
50 points in a fourth quarter for the Atlanta Hawks. Like, what is going on? It's like circus numbers. What are we doing?
And we sound like 2 old heads complaining. It's a tough watch. It's a tough watch sometimes. I don't mind the shooting. I just know the numbers. Like, when you strictly look at it from the numbers in betting, it's getting really hard to bet.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
Louis Riddick has interviewed for every job in North America. And I'm not just talking football. I'm talking about every business in North America of any kind whatsoever. Tire companies, grocery store CEOs, shopping malls, insurance companies. What job hasn't Louis Riddick interviewed for?
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
The NBA will take center stage once football stops, and people will watch the NBA playoffs and all that. But the standings are whacked out in the Western Conference. Like Oklahoma City, Memphis, and the Houston Rockets are the best teams in the conference.
You want to talk about a team with overs and no defense? The Wizards are your team. It's unbelievable. They can't make a total high enough. It's nuts.
Sports Rage tonight. Weeknights 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. Only on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I know it's cold out there. My producer Frank is complaining all morning long about the weather in New York City. I'm here in South Florida. It's nice and pleasant. I'm looking here, 65 degrees. I'm not trying to make everyone jealous in SportsGrid land. I'm just saying I'm a host in Florida. I'm hosting remotely, but naturally here I'm on SportsGrid Network every day of the week and happy to be here with you again. No football, by the way, until Thursday. Don't worry. We'll preview the college football playoff games Thursday, Friday, big weekend games Saturday, Sunday, and Monday as well. Also, Jacob Camenker will join us courtesy of Sporting News. We'll also get into the latest with the Denver Broncos. Cody Roark is going to join us. Broncos play the Buffalo Bills coming up this weekend. Did I get to it all? Probably not. So let's get started. We'll start off with the big story in sports betting today before we get to the coaching carousel in the National Football League. A brand new idea that is being implemented by DraftKings Sportsbook. And by the way, credit to them in terms of marketing. There's a brand new subscription service that just launched, in case you missed it, over the weekend. It's going to give members increased odds on the types of bets that are most profitable to the company. Get this, subscribers to DK Sportsbook Plus are going to receive odds boosts on parlays. Yes, all of you who love betting on parlays. A 2-leg parlay gets a 10% odds boost. A 3-leg parlay, Luke, our director, will love this. He gets a 20% boost. For parlays with 11 or more legs, which is crazy, the odds will give you a 100% boost. My goodness. Here's the statement from DraftKings. Do they know how to market or what? The subscription service was designed to offer our customers an enhanced fan experience, creating more excitement and value to our parlay offering. There it is. Heck of a statement. Here's what it says. You guys love betting on parlays. We're going to try and entice you to bet on more. That's how it should read. That's not how it reads. The Tennessee Titans have fired their general manager, Ran Carthon, this morning. He was 9-25 over the last 2 seasons. The Titans have the first overall pick in the NFL draft. Their president of football operations, a gentleman by the name of Chad Brinker, is going to lead the new search for a GM. Brian Callahan will remain the head coach of the Tennessee Titans as they decide, as it looks like, between Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. Meanwhile, the Chicago Bears coaching search continues. They're looking at potentially interviewing Mike McCarthy, former Super Bowl winning coach, most recently coaching and still coaching, by the way, with the Dallas Cowboys. As of right now, unclear as to whether or not they'll get permission to interview him. We'll see what Jerry Jones has to say about this on his radio show. Very odd situation continuing in Las Vegas. Antonio Pierce, the head coach there. Will he be the head coach in the future? No one really seems to know for sure. He had his end of the season press conference and was asked if he's going to be back next season or if not.
Again, do you have any clarity on what's happening next year about your job status?
I haven't been told anything different.
Do you want to get that cleared up ASAP, or do you?
It's only coming from the outside. It's not inside the building. So, to me, there's nothing to clean up until I hear it from inside the building.
Got a big picture, not just roster, coaching staff, but what do you think you guys need to do moving forward to help turn things around?
Got to get better players. Got to coach better. Got to do a lot of things better when you only win 4 games.
For yourself, individually, I know you obviously focus on the entire team, but for yourself personally as a head coach, where do you think you need to improve moving forward?
Everything that a head coach needs improving.
I would say so. The Raiders were awful last year. Hey, Gus Bradley got fired yesterday. Has been fired a bunch here over the last decade. Sorry, Gus. Colts have fired him as defensive coordinator. He'll get another job, though. These guys in the NFL, they just keep cycling around. Packers wide receiver Christian Watson had season-ending ACL surgery, not going to play in their upcoming playoff game. All right, now let's get to some college football again. Thursday night, big games coming up. Friday night as well. Clemson has fired their defensive coordinator, Wes Goodwin. He allowed 160 rushing yards a game. That's obviously not good. Jalon Walker, Michael Williams headed to the NFL draft. They played for Georgia last season. And Oregon's great wide receiver, Tez Johnson, has declared for the NFL draft. He had 10 touchdowns last year. Derek Harmon is also headed to the draft as well. All right, in the NBA last night, the Mavs fell to the Grizzlies by a final of 119-104. The injury note from that game is significant. Kyrie Irving, with his back issue, is going to be out 1 to 2 weeks. Meanwhile, the Miami Heat led by double digits in the fourth quarter yet again, and they fall to the Sacramento Kings on a 5-game road trip in game one, 123-118. Double-digit lead squandered. I believe they led by 17 in the fourth quarter in this game. Of course, Jimmy Butler is suspended and not playing with the team for the time being. Eric Spoelstra, the head coach, still looking for some answers how to close out games.
Just some more poise, offensively. We did so many great things to get up 17. And look, battling back, and even when they took the lead to get this thing to overtime, then second overtime, there's so many just commendable competitive plays. We also have to make the right plays, and you're up 17, have a little bit more poise offensively, just to make the defense work a little bit more, be a little bit stronger with the ball, really trust it in those possessions, and then you keep it a double-digit lead. We kind of fueled them going the other way with some quick shots. You don't want to play prevent offense. I'm going to have to look at it, but I felt like we could have been a little bit more intentional, offensively. Then defensively, there's some good things, but then, whether man or zone, we just could not come up with the rebound to seal, stem the momentum, or to win the game.
As of right now, the Heat still trying to find ways to win without Jimmy Butler. Anthony Edwards, another big game last night, 37 points, 8 assists, 7 rebounds. Wolves beat the Clippers 108-106. Chris Finch clearly encouraged with some of the results as of late.
Survived another slow start. Finally got our defense going. I always thought it was both sides of the ball to start the game. Couldn't make a shot, and then thought our defense was soft, but all credit to ourselves. We turned it around there and found rhythm on both ends. So.
Ant was in another good rhythm in this game tonight. He seemed to be playing well with Dante. What was your read on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought did a good job of finding people, mixing up balance of being aggressive and also playmaking, get to the heart of the defense, going quick, staying in one direction when he did go, not trying to overcomplicate it in a crowd. And then obviously, hit some massive big shots for us.
As of right now, we're still trying to find answers whether the Philadelphia 76ers can hang on for dear life with missing Joel Embiid for basically every other game. Bradley Beal last night scored 25 points for the Suns as the 76ers fall again, 109-99. They have been using Tyrese Maxey 40 minutes a night and was asked last night if he is running on thin ice.
Nah, I don't think so. I think I'm young and, I get the proper rest and treatment. Medical staff does a really good job. I think the only time that it really gets me maybe back-to-back sometimes, and I'll be tired of those. But, no, I feel good, man. My body feels really good. I've been lifting. I've been doing all the things to maintain that. When I say that, I'm just saying, I have to be able to be smart with it. And I know that, I'm a play, so I know that the touches are going to be there, the shots are going to be there, and I have to find ways to get others involved and to make sure others feel good as well. 'Cause I'm going to be out there a lot. I know that, so.
I think right now, for the time being, the Philadelphia 76ers would like to get Joel Embiid back every night. I don't know if that's going to happen. All right, lots of baseball news, including this morning. The Athletic reports Brent Rooker is signing a contract extension with the formerly Oakland, now known as Sacramento A's, 5 years, $60 million. The Reds have made a trade. They've acquired Gavin Lux for the Dodgers. Michael Lorenzen is back starting in baseball, going to be for the Royals this time. 1 year, $7 million. The Rays are planning on supporting Tropicana Field's repair for the 2026 season, over $55 million, the result there. In college hoops last night, number 12 Houston beats TCU, final score 65-46. Also in double overtime, the Buckeyes beat the Golden Gophers in the Big Ten, 89-88, and the Wisconsin Badgers, they moved to 12-3 with the Big Ten win 75-63 over Rutgers. And if college hoops is your bag, guess what? We got a lot of that coming up next. Michael DeCourcy from Sporting News previews the big games in college basketball. 2 teams in the top 10 facing off tonight. We'll discuss it next on NewsWire. Don't go away.
He will never repeat this year again as he gets older. It's not happening. That's not the way the world works. In the NFL, when you get older, your numbers dive. That's all there is to it.
Why did you play him for as long as you played him against Dallas if you weren't going to play him this week to break the record? I mean, you left him in that Dallas game forever.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I know people are getting after Cole Anthony. Folks, it was a bang-bang play. You know, you got to give Cole Anthony props for diving with a loose ball. Yeah, was it a little bit, reckless? Maybe. But at the end of the day, for people to go after Cole Anthony and think this is a dirty play, you don't know ball.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text, put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Statement from Giants president John Mara. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll will continue in their respective roles with the organization. As disappointing as the results of the season have been, Steve Tisch and I remain confident in the process that Joe and Brian have implemented.
The Giants, an absolute train wreck, and I love it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. It is Tuesday, so that's a big night in college basketball, and will be moving forward as we get done with college football next couple of weeks. NFL, of course, winding down. Let's bring in Michael DeCourcy from Sporting News. He has his eye on a number of games tonight, which we will break down. Mike, great to have you back. Happy New Year. Let's start in the SEC. We've got 2 teams in the top 10 squaring off. And boy, the odds makers are telling us this is a dead even matchup here between the Gators and Volunteers. Florida 1.5-point favorites, total of 148.5. These are 2 teams that are expected to be in the dance. They're 2 teams that are expected to fight it out for the SEC. Does Florida have enough home court juice tonight to get by Tennessee? Mike, what do you think? Yeah, I think that's a great question about this. One of the things that I like about Tennessee going into this game is that the road isn't new to them. They went to Illinois in December and were able to get a significant road win against maybe the most talented team in the Big Ten, one of the really great young teams in college basketball. So I like Tennessee going in here. That number has come down a little bit from the opener. That tells you a little bit about the belief in the Vols on the road here. I like Tennessee going into this game. I don't think that Florida has been guarded like Tennessee will guard. Walter Clayton had a pretty comfortable day, even in defeat at Kentucky. I think that Jemai Meshack will be shadowing him for a lot of tonight, and I kind of like the Vols here.
All right, Mike, I have one thing for you. Okay, it's this. Sorry, buddy, can't do it. Can't have that tonight. Can't have that tonight, Mike. I'm going the other way. Kentucky has been a big surprise. I don't know that anybody had them ranked this high at this point in the season. There were maybe a transition year with Mark Pope. Not the case. 2.5-point favorites tonight. Georgia's very good, even though they're not ranked. Usually in college hoops, we see a big rally from the home team that's not ranked taking on a team that is highly ranked. You know how it works. They rush the court, the whole thing after. Does that happen tonight in Athens?
Well, it will if Kentucky doesn't start to defend better. That's a significant absence from the portfolio of the Wildcats at this point. Scored 100+ against Florida at home on Saturday, gave up 100. So they have to do better, especially guarding pick and rolls. I think this is a great chance for them to work on their defense because Georgia's a very fine team, but not a great offense. The home court advantage at Stegman is not always as great when Kentucky comes in because Kentucky often brings a lot of people to that building because it's a place they know in the past they were able to get into. So that'll be interesting to watch how much of a home court advantage the Bulldogs have. I kind of like Kentucky here, but if I were to not go on any of the games that we're going to discuss, this would be the one.
All right, fair enough. Now let's get to the SEC standings where Tennessee, no surprise, undefeated 14-0. They're number one. Auburn right there. Mississippi State, one of the big surprises of the season. They're third in the SEC, followed by Vandy, Bama, Kentucky, and Ole Miss. So from these, is there a team potentially in odds that you like to potentially win the SEC?
Well, I love Auburn relative to the regular season. They have been a really phenomenal team, dominated terrific opposition in non-conference play with the exception of their trip to Cameron Indoor Stadium. I was in the building that night, and even in defeat, they were impressive. It's been an astounding team, honestly, to this point in the season. How much room is there for them to improve is a question. And I honestly haven't studied the SEC schedules to see if anybody has a little bit of an advantage, especially in such a talented league. But right now, Auburn is a clear number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament. And given that, I would probably favor them to go on and win the regular season of the SEC.
All right, we got a treat tonight. Cooper Flagg back on the court anytime he is. He's must watch. Duke is 14.5-point favorites over Pitt tonight. The Blue Devils ranked 4th in the country. Cooper Flagg has lived up to virtually all the billing this season. He's been one of the most watched players in all of college basketball, hasn't he?
He's fantastic. There is nothing on a basketball floor at which he is not elite. Just a complete player. And to have that as a freshman, to be honest with you, he had it at 15. So I guess I'm not surprised he has it as a freshman in college. It's just a fabulous basketball player. I keep seeing other players projected. Oh, this will be the guy that they'll take 1 overall. That'll be the guy they take 1 overall. But if it's anybody but Cooper Flagg, I think the team that selects the other player will end up regretting it. Cooper Flagg is a rare prospect in American basketball. It's been a very long time since we've had someone hit his level. He's got everything, and it's going to be a real challenge for Pitt. Cam Corrin, a guy who plays mostly around the goal, can he be mobile enough to deal with Coop on the perimeter, or do they have to go with Guillermo Diaz-Graham, who's not as physically tough? It's a real challenge for the Panthers. I'm not sure about the number. That's a big number. The one I initially saw was a much more comfortable number. But Duke needs this game. They don't hardly have any
quad one games the rest of the season. They have 3 total as it stands now with where the teams are, and none until February. So they need this one, and I think they'll go and get it.
Yeah, Duke, a team that generally gets bet up every night, and tonight 14.5, at least for now. Okay, finally, the nightcap, Michigan takes on UCLA. 2 teams in the top 25, Mike. 1 team won't be after tonight. Bruins, 3.5-point favorites over the Wolverines, total 141.5. What's your assessment of this one?
Well, it's fascinating to me that would be the case, that they would be favored, even at Pauley, because they have struggled on offense, UCLA has. And Michigan provides a defensive challenge for this great Bruins defense that's unlike anything they've seen. A 7'1" inside with Vlad Golden, and then 7-footer Danny Wolf on the move. That's a real challenge for the Bruins. It'll say a lot about UCLA if they can pull this one off. Even at home, that's a monstrous challenge defensively for them. And if they can, even if they play well defensively, they still have to find a way to score enough points. I kind of like Michigan here because of that struggle to score that UCLA has endured.
All right, Mike. Well, listen, enjoy the games tonight. I'm sure we'll check back after we get the results and maybe the new top 25 next week. Thanks again.
Thank you, Craig.
All right, Michael DeCourcy of Sporting News here with us. Coming up, the Orange Bowl is on deck. Notre Dame, Penn State, the Battle of Titans in Miami Gardens. Not South Beach, by the way. Miami Gardens. We'll have a preview of that game coming up. Our very own Ben Stevens previews that game. We'll also hear from the head coaches Marcus Freeman and James Franklin next on NewsWire.
He will never repeat this year again as he gets older. It's not happening. That's not the way the world works. In the NFL, when you get older, your numbers dive. That's all there is to it.
Why did you play him for as long as you played him against Dallas if you weren't going to play him this week to break the record? I mean, you left him in that Dallas game forever.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I know people are getting after Cole Anthony. Folks, it was a bang-bang play. You know, you got to give Cole Anthony props for diving with a loose ball. Yeah, was it a little bit, reckless? Maybe. But at the end of the day, for people to go after Cole Anthony and think this is a dirty play, you don't know ball.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. It's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Statement from Giants president John Mara. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll will continue in their respective roles with the organization. As disappointing as the results of the season have been, Steve Tisch and I remain confident in the process that Joe and Brian have implemented.
The Giants, an absolute train wreck, and I love it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Thursday night's college football game at the Orange Bowl. Tickets upstairs in the $250 range to start with. Didn't see that coming. A lot of folks headed to South Florida this time of the year to catch Notre Dame and Penn State. We're going to discuss that and hear from the coaches and get a preview. It's time now for the SportsGrid Sound Off. All right, so here we go. Thursday night, two of the most iconic teams in all of college football, Notre Dame and Penn State, will face off It's the semifinals for the first time in college football, down from the first 12 teams that we started with. Let's get a preview of the game. Who better to talk about it than our very own Ben Stevens? Here's a preview of the Orange Bowl.
Our first of two college football playoff semifinals in South Florida Thursday night. It's the Orange Bowl between Notre Dame and Penn State. The Fighting Irish, a slight favorite, a 1.5 favorite, around minus 130 on the money line, with the lower of two totals in the college football playoff semifinal round, standing at 46.5. Notre Dame, since the loss to Northern Illinois, has won 12 consecutive games. In fact, the Fighting Irish this year against 12 opponents not from the Mid-American Conference, 11-0-1 against the spread, with an average margin of victory of better than 26 points per game. Penn State as a favorite, elite, 34-1 straight up since the start of 2022, but as an underdog, which the Nittany Lions are for the Orange Bowl, winless, 0-6 outright. The Orange Bowl in Miami. Craig, back to you.
All right, thanks very much, Ben. Should be a fun matchup, which would include a lot of seniors on the side of the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. In fact, some of those defensive players have really carried the Irish thus far. Don't do a lot on offense, but pick sixes and stopping the other team, that's been their key. Head coach of Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman, all ready for this matchup and says it has been the seniors that have gotten them there.
Marcus, what is it about this group of captains, this group of seniors, in terms of leadership that is maybe unique to this football team?
I think the thing I respect about them most is the way they led when things weren't going so well, right? The ability to stand in front of the team, the ability to say, this is our culture and this is what we're going to do and this is the work we're going to put in. I got a lot of respect for them. I've said this before, but culture's revealed in tough moments. I met with the captains last night about, the plan for this week, and I couldn't even get it out of my mouth before they said, Coach, we have to move forward. We have to move forward. If we didn't listen to this noise before now, why are we changing? And so they're taking the things I've said. Now it's just a strong belief, and they are truly an extension of me in that locker room. And it's great when you have players leading your program.
There's a lot of questions as to whether or not this game will have more fans from Happy Valley or from the side of the Irish. South Bend? I'm not sure. How many fans will travel to these games? Well, 100,000 people saw Penn State play at home last week in Beaver Stadium. James Franklin is hopeful that the Nittany Lions faithful are headed to South Florida.
I don't think people understand when you're playing SMU at home and you're filling up a 107,000 seat stadium with pretty much all of your own fans. SMU, small private school. That was impressive. That was a great home environment. And then the very next week, on a short notice, you got to travel again. I'm talking about for our fans to travel again. And I thought last week's support was awesome. I got to give Boise credit too. I thought they did a great job. The energy in there was really good. But here we are again, and this is the challenge of the playoffs. But our fans have been great. Our fans are special. We recognize that, and we're expecting a huge crowd in Miami. And I challenge everybody to wear white and white out energy. We want that place rocking. Probably more hoodies than T-shirts from what I've heard on the weather report. But we need that place rocking, and we appreciate the support that we always get.
Who it is on Thursday night in South Florida? It's gonna be cold here. I guess I didn't look at the weather report. All right, real quick. Here's the list of the coaches the Jaguars are requesting. This just came out. Jaguars, very nice. Put it all on a nice graphic for me to read. Kellen Moore, Todd Monken, Joe Brady, Liam Cohen from the Bucks, Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator from the Lions, Aaron Glenn from Detroit, Patrick Graham. Got me on him, sorry. And former Jets head coach Robert Saleh. Those are the requests for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're expected to hire a new coach over the next couple of weeks. All right, coming up next, big story of the day. The Titans are going to have somebody else in that draft room making the pick. Who will it be? We'll ask Jacob Camenker next. Don't go away.
will never repeat this year again as he gets older. It's not happening. That's not the way the world works. In the NFL, when you get older, your numbers dive. That's all there is to it.
Why did you play him for as long as you played him against Dallas if you weren't going to play him this week to break the record? I mean, you left him in that Dallas game forever.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I know people are getting after Cole Anthony. Folks, it was a bang-bang play. You know, you got to give Cole Anthony props for diving with a loose ball. Yeah, was it a little bit, reckless? Maybe. But at the end of the day, for people to go after Cole Anthony and think this is a dirty play, you don't know ball.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Statement from Giants president John Mara. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll will continue in their respective roles with the organization. As disappointing as the results of the season have been, Steve Tisch and I remain confident in the process that Joe and Brian have implemented.
The Giants, an absolute train wreck, and I love it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish, joined by Jacob Camenker of Sporting News. We'll dive into the latest in the NFL, take a look at some of the games, and also some of the latest news. The biggest news in the NFL today is the Titans have fired their general manager, Ran Carthon. So let's get Jacob Camenker's thoughts on that. Jacob, welcome back to the show. Maybe I'm wrong, but this was not a name that at least I saw as a potential firing. But I guess the Titans ownership, it has to be, looked at this as though, hey, we have the number one pick. We don't trust this guy to make the pick. I'm sorry to say, but that's got to be it for me.
Yeah, that has to be their mentality, but this is a surprise, I would say. I mean, there was 4 years left on his contract. He'd only been there 2 years, and he really oversaw a big transition within the organization this past year with Mike Vrabel being fired, Brian Callahan being brought on, and he really overhauled that roster. He spent a lot of money in free agency to get guys like Tony Pollard and Chidobe Awuzie and Lloyd Cushenberry to try to strengthen some of these teams' weaknesses. And, of course, Calvin Ridley they got. But things just didn't pan out this year. I think that the team probably was expecting more under first-year coach Brian Callahan. I'm not sure that the ownership group maybe realized exactly what they had in Mike Vrabel, a coach who consistently got more out of his roster than maybe any other coach in the NFL would have. So I kind of think that bringing Callahan in, a less proven coach, there was always going to be some sort of pullback in terms of record. And the Titans apparently are blaming Ran Carthon for that. I don't know that he did a bad job of assembling the talent. I think it was just, you had a first-year head coach, you didn't have a good quarterback. It's usually a recipe for disaster in the NFL.
Yeah, every team, Jacob, you're right. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Gerard Mayo looks like he had a good quarterback there, and Drake May seems like that was a good draft pick. But needless to say, I was not aware. Adam Kaplan was on the show yesterday and said that Gerard Mayo was more of a succession deal to Bill Belichick, that when he got the job, that was the plan for him to come in and be the head coach. Well, clearly Robert Kraft not happy with that succession plan, because after 1 year, he's already made the change. Vrabel is the name that's naturally going to be mentioned, and there'll be some others as well. Really tough deal for Gerard Mayo here. It really wasn't his decision to become the head coach. It was sort of predetermined, but now it seems like they just sort of yanked the rug out from under him and saying, hey, look, we didn't sign up for that. It was Belichick that signed up for that, and we're not going to honor that agreement. But maybe Mayo could go to North Carolina. That would be my guess.
Right. I think Mayo's going to land somewhere. He needs more seasoning before he's going to be a head coach. And Robert Kraft did seem to have belief in him. He called it I believe, the hardest decision of his life to move on from Mayo after just one season. But what it boils down to is he wasn't ready to be a head coach. You saw that just in his interactions with certain players and the media. There would be basically times where he would answer a question about a strategy and then immediately contradict himself the next day. Or he would say Antonio Gibson is going to start this game, and then Ramondre Stevenson would start the game, and you wouldn't understand exactly why. So it felt kind of like he was just trying to figure out how to do things, and just with the talent on that roster, which there really just isn't much, especially on offense outside of Drake May, anyone with this team was going to have trouble. So having an inexperienced head coach who wasn't ready just wasn't the right situation for Mayo. So I think moving on from him makes sense for both parties. Mayo's going to land on his feet. He'll maybe get a second chance somewhere down the line. And from the Patriots standpoint, you're looking at Mike Vrabel's out there. I think that he's a perfect candidate for this team, and he'll be able to elevate things. But I want to see exactly where they end up interviewing for offensive candidates.
Yeah, I want to move ahead here off the Patriots and go to the Bears, guys. Let's go to the Bears. The Bears are asking permission to speak to Mike McCarthy in one of the more bizarre requests that I've seen thus far. Wasn't even sure that he would be back with Dallas. Take nothing away from McCarthy. Won a Super Bowl, very high-level head coach. It has simply not gone that well for him in Dallas. So it's a little bit of a surprise to me that this would be somebody of interest to the Bears. But maybe we're just making more out of it than what it is.
I think it's very interesting from Dallas's standpoint. You've heard comments from Jerry Jones over the past, really the whole season, that he doesn't necessarily want to move on from Mike McCarthy. He tends to be fiercely loyal when it comes to his head coaches, but he's a lame duck coach in that his contract is expiring on January 14th. So if Mike McCarthy wants a change of scenery, maybe the pressure in Dallas is getting to him, or maybe he doesn't think he can win with this roster, I think that that's going to be something that McCarthy's weighing over the next few days, or maybe he's going to try to leverage Dallas to get as much money on his next deal as possible. But I think from a Bears standpoint, they need someone who's going to steady Caleb Williams and really get this offense back on track, because let's be honest, they had a tough time last year. Caleb Williams flashed talent, but he also had a lot of negative plays, especially taking sacks. And they just need an experienced coach, I think, to maybe even things out, or an offensive guru to work with Caleb Williams. Those are really their two options. So I understand that McCarthy's playoff success certainly hasn't been there, but I think if you were to bring him in for the Bears, it would be a lot like what the Jaguars did when they hired Doug Peterson after Urban Meyer. That was a disaster, but Peterson at least got Trevor Lawrence on a better trajectory. Now, that didn't pan out long term, but, he kind of served his role there. And I think you could see something similar happen with McCarthy if the Cowboys end up letting him walk.
All right, fair enough. Bears also going to interview, it looks like, the report, Joe Brady, offensive coordinator for Buffalo. Brady's stock, again, seems to be rising, not forgetting that Brady was largely responsible for Burrow's success at LSU. I think people just keep forgetting that now that Burrow's a superstar. I think that's factoring in. All right, let's look at the schedule for the weekend. We'll start off with Saturday. Texans are back on a Saturday against the Chargers. Steelers taking on the Ravens. And let's start off with the first game of the two. Chargers take on Houston. The chic pick right now is everybody taking the Chargers. Total of 42.5. Do you think that's the right side here? Or, excuse me, the Chargers are laying 2.5 points. Do you think that's the right side here, or are we being drawn into the wrong side here, Jacob?
I do think the Chargers are the right side, and that may seem square to say, but at this point, you look at the Texans, over their last 4 games, I believe they're averaging just under 14 points a game. This Chargers offense is kind of hitting its stride, and I know they've played weaker opponents the last 2 weeks, the Patriots and Raiders, but the week before that, they dropped 34 points on the Denver Broncos, who have a top 5 scoring defense this year. I believe it ranks 3rd overall. So you're talking about an offense that can score on good defenses, and Houston has been kind of shaky against wide receivers at times this year. They tend to allow a lot of big plays, and that just screams to me that they're going to have trouble with Ladd McConkey. So I like the Chargers here, and I think they're going to pull this one out. So I'm going to be backing them here. And by the way, one more thing. Texans only have a 1-5 record against winning teams this year. So I don't expect them to last long in the playoffs if they do get by the Chargers here.
Yeah, to me, this is a tough one because I understand the thought process here. It feels like zagging is the way to go here. All right, the shocking line of the week to me is this one. Ravens 9.5-point favorites against the Steelers. What I'm trying to do, Jacob, is think back in memory here to the last time that the Ravens were this big a favorite over Pittsburgh, and nothing comes to mind because they always play these close games. And then, Jacob, you know what this sort of reminded me of a little bit? Is Philly going into the playoffs last year. I couldn't believe that Philly was such a big dog, and then it reminded me they lost 1 million games at the end of the season. They looked like they had nothing left, and they got killed. Is that the case here with Pittsburgh? They don't have enough to turn it on for one more game to keep it close? Are they cooked? That's it?
I don't think they're fully cooked at this point. I think the Ravens probably win this game. But like you said, this spread just looks way too high to me. I know Lamar Jackson's playing out of his mind right now, really MVP level, but his career passer rating against Pittsburgh, I believe, is about 73 or 74. It's his worst against any single team. So I think that the Steelers have the ability to slow down Jackson or just rattle him enough to make this a close game. And we saw it against the Bengals. The Steelers can be down late, and they can make a comeback push in garbage time. So if you're talking about a 14-point game late, I'm confident that the Steelers can get a backdoor cover here. So I'm going to be backing them, I think, as weird as it feels.
Yeah, I got to do the same. It's either take the points or nothing in this game. I mean, if you told me the Ravens were 3, I probably would have said, all right, sounds about right. 9.5, crazy. Jacob, enjoy the games this week. Thanks again for making some time for us here on the show. We appreciate it.
No problem, Craig. Take care.
All right, we'll preview the Broncos and Bills next with Cody Roark.
He will never repeat this year again as he gets older. It's not happening. That's not the way the world works. In the NFL, when you get older, your numbers dive. That's all there is to it.
Why did you play him for as long as you played him against Dallas if you weren't going to play him this week to break the record? I mean, you left him in that Dallas game forever.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I know people are getting after Cole Anthony. Folks, it was a bang-bang play. You know, you got to give Cole Anthony props for diving on a loose ball. Yeah, was it a little bit, reckless? Maybe. But at the end of the day, for people to go after Cole Anthony and think this is a dirty play, you don't know ball.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text. Put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe. It's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Statement from Giants president John Mara. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll will continue in their respective roles with the organization. As disappointing as the results of the season have been, Steve Tisch and I remain confident in the process that Joe and Brian have implemented.
The Giants, an absolute train wreck, and I love it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. I'm Craig Mish. Cody Roark is getting ready for the big game this weekend between the Broncos and Bills. Let's get a preview of the matchup. Cody, thanks again for coming on NewsWire. You can catch Cody's work over at Mile High Sports. Cody, thanks for coming on. The Chiefs last week, did you feel like they decided to just hand this over to the Broncos? There was a lot of people going into this game that thought the Chiefs wouldn't lay down and this could be a close game. And every other game in the NFL, divisional, all those games were close. Every team went except for this one. This was the one that everyone thought would be close, and it wasn't. So what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, I mean, look, when you're the Kansas City Chiefs, you only have one loss in the year. You've locked up the number 1 seed. The main goal for them is trying to three-peat, right? They want to go back to back to back. And this has been a team, Kansas City's been a team that's kind of been battle tested all year. They haven't played their best football despite them being 15-1. And obviously, a few weeks ago, Patrick Mahomes got banged up. They want to go into the playoffs fully healthy. So in the last week of the regular season, when you have the number 1 seed all locked up, you're afforded the opportunity to rest your starters. And so that means that Denver's going to face a bunch of players who are the backups, the 2 deep options there, and so it's a great opportunity for Kansas City to evaluate their guys. But for Denver, didn't matter who was out there on the field. Like, their goal, this was an elimination game for them. Win the game, you're in the playoffs. Lose the game, you're out. Their goal was to get to the postseason, and didn't matter who was out there on the field. The Broncos came out with the mentality that, hey, we have a goal we have to accomplish, and they certainly came out from the onset. They came out firing, and Bo Nix was a big part of that in Sunday's 38-0 victory.
Yeah, he was. I mean, but you could just simply ask Tampa Bay or Atlanta or the Buffalo Bills. Like it seemed like every team was playing a close game in a surprising way. Broncos finished the regular season number 10 in scoring offense, number 3 in scoring defense, and offensively they scored 28 points 8 times, all in wins, and they were really good on the defensive side of the ball too. And there was a lot of made of Sean Payton when he came in and took over that roster, Cody, last year. It didn't look good at all. In fact, it looked disastrous. People were asking, is this going to even work for Sean Payton? But this recipe that he's cooked up for this year's Broncos, pretty similar to those old Saints teams, aren't they?
Yeah, look, and a lot of it is what Sean Payton has said. He told us, a few weeks after training camp started in the offseason, he said he believed that this team that he has is young and hungry, and he believes that a young and hungry team can be dangerous. And certainly that kind of proved to be the case here. I mean, the Broncos were competitive in really every game this season but one, and that was the Baltimore Ravens game, which got away from them right before halftime. And then to open up the second half, Lamar Jackson, the Ravens, who could be a very prominent figure to go to the AFC Championship this year, depending on how the playoffs go. I know you were talking about the Ravens-Steelers line a little bit earlier, but that's because the Ravens are a really good team. So for Denver, for them, they've overcome all the expectations. A lot of people had them at 5 wins. A lot of the lines had them at 5.5 this season. They hit the over on that. And I think the biggest thing is that they tuned out the outside noise. But you mentioned the offense in terms of how much improved they have been. There's just a belief. There was a buy-in here. And certainly players that I've spoken to inside the Broncos locker room said that they felt like with Bo as their quarterback, they never had a moment this season where they felt like they were out of a game, right? And obviously the Baltimore one, they continue to fight and claw there. But every game that they've lost has been in a 1-score game this season, minus the Baltimore one. So they've been competitive all season long. They lose a heartbreaker to Kansas City on a blocked field goal against Patrick Mahomes and those starters at Arrowhead early on in the season. So this is a team that believes they can compete with anybody. They're young and they're hungry, as players told us. We heard from Riley Moss, Marvin Mims. That's a belief right now that's kind of encapsulated throughout the entire locker room. And now it goes into, obviously, a big week here against the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, tough game. We'll preview that in a minute here. Bo Nix's numbers were off the charts for year one. Almost 3,800 passing yards, 430 rushing yards, 34 total touchdowns. Also the first rookie quarterback in NFL history to record multiple games with at least 300 passing yards, 4 passing touchdowns, and a passer rating of 140. Great note there that Frank, my producer, gives me here. That's incredible for a first-year guy, especially the way that he started this season, Cody. I mean, he's finished it a lot stronger than he started.
Yeah, you mentioned the Broncos started the season 0-2. Bo Nix had 0 touchdowns to 4 interceptions, and everybody was already writing the eulogy, saying, "Hey, like Bo Nix is not the guy." It's just I think it's a lesson to NFL teams. Be patient with your young quarterbacks and put them in a position to succeed. The Broncos, Sean Payton did just that, and obviously Bo has turned in an impressive performance. You mentioned that note there, but because of his season, he surpassed on Sunday Baker Mayfield for the second most passing touchdowns by a rookie in NFL history. He was 2 behind Justin Herbert, who leads that mark there. Just an impressive campaign for him. And look, the fact that he's able to do it without a consistent run game, the Broncos didn't have a single rusher go over 550 yards this season. That's crazy when you think about it. Bo was the second leading rusher on the team, and they didn't have a lot of production from the tight end position. So really, Bo was making a lot of work with not a lot of proven guys really outside of Cortland Sutton this season.
Yeah, I would agree. All things that you said, I'll double down on those. Let's double down on this quote. Here's Patrick Surtain after the win on Sunday talking about how great the season has been.
First off, man, it's a good feeling for sure. But I think knowing the moment and also being in the moment it's a good feeling because you understand what this organization has been through the past couple of years, the past 9 years, without reaching the playoffs and finally getting to the opportunity in this point, it means something special, rightfully so. But, as a team as a whole, we all know we're not finished yet. The job's not done. We're looking to go into Buffalo and go into a great atmosphere that Buffalo has and get a win at the end of the day. And I think that's what this team mindset is heading towards, is Buffalo. I mean, obviously, it's great to reach the playoffs, but I feel like we got more. Our destiny means much more than just one playoff game for sure. So we're looking to go in a deep run.
I feel so old, Cody. I did radio shows with his dad, Patrick Surtain, here in South Florida. It makes me feel old every time I hear him talk. All right, so Pat's one of the leaders of the defense. Will they have enough defense to stop Josh Allen? The odds makers are telling us no. Buffalo's 8.5-point favorites, total 47.5. Team total for Buffalo says 3 touchdowns here. So, Cody, if Buffalo scores 3 touchdowns, generally with what their odds are, Denver's not going to win this game if that comes through. So what will Denver have to do to at least just slow him down, to bring this down to a minute left in the game? Maybe Denver has the ball. Maybe they're down 1 or 2, because to me, that's the only recipe to get this done, is a late scoring win.
Yeah, keep it within 1 score here. Force some turnovers. Force Josh Allen to make a mistake. You're the number 1 defense in the NFL in terms of sacks on the year against the number 1 offense in terms of sacks allowed. It's going to be which advantage is going to come forth there. I think it's about creating turnovers, creating those opportunities, and keeping it within 1 score. If you can do that and you can force Buffalo to make a mistake, the Broncos could very well shock the world here on Sunday.
All right, I'll be shocked. Thanks, Cody, for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
He will never repeat this year again as he gets older. It's not happening. That's not the way the world works. In the NFL, when you get older, your numbers dive. That's all there is to it.
Why did you play him for as long as you played him against Dallas if you weren't going to play him this week to break the record? I mean, you left him in that Dallas game forever.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
I know people are getting after Cole Anthony. Folks, it was a bang-bang play. You got to give Cole Anthony props for diving on a loose ball. Yeah, was it a little bit, reckless? Maybe. But at the end of the day, for people to go after Cole Anthony and think this is a dirty play, you don't know ball.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid. The Bostonian versus the Book.
I remember one time, I don't know if Kenny will remember this, I said put 100 on, I think I left it on a text, put 100 on this horse that won, and then Kenny called me back later and goes, hey, I never got the text. And I'm like,
no.
Oh yeah. Remember that, Kenny?
I would never stiff anybody. He texted me as they're loading into the gate, maybe, it's too late.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
Statement from Giants president John Mara. Joe Shane and Brian Daboll will continue in their respective roles with the organization. As disappointing as the results of the season have been, Steve Tisch and I remain confident in the process that Joe and Brian have implemented.
The Giants, an absolute train wreck, and I love it.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Before we wrap up the show, we get into some fun topics here as we end the show. And one not fun topic, but some of the fun happened yesterday with Mike Breen, who made a little mistake on the air, tried to correct himself in a funny way. We'll get to that. Also, another championship for North Dakota State. And unfortunately, there's a little scuttle going on with the San Diego Padres organization. That and a whole lot more. It's time now for some last licks. All right, we'll start off with a championship. This is a stunning number here, folks, a stunning number. North Dakota State University ended up winning another FCS championship. That's not a big deal. I honestly did not realize how many they've won. If you would have told me they won 4 or 5, I would have said, okay, cool, that's a lot. I mean, what kind of program do you have to win 10 FCS championships? I mean, that is insane. Congratulations to them. They win over the weekend by a final score of 35-32, and does beg the question as to whether or not an FCS program can move up to FBS after so much winning. We see this occasionally, and sometimes, unfortunately, it doesn't work. But I got to wonder if there is a chance that this happens in the future. So congratulations to them. They win another one, and they can hang. Do they even have room for banners at this point? I mean, 10 championships, 10 rings, 10 trophies, 10 banners. You got to put them somewhere. You got to hang them up somewhere. Okay, now this one is a tough one, and by the way, raises so many questions for the future of the San Diego Padres, not just for this offseason, but also for the future. You may remember the Padres owner was his name was Peter Seidler. He passed away tragically about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, and then the control interest went over to his wife, Sheil Seidler. But Peter, the husband of Sheil, expressed his desire to have her take over. Instead, the brothers of Peter Seidler took over the San Diego Padres. Whoa. Now, folks, all of a sudden here, we've got some very big problems in San Diego, because if you cannot figure out who the control person is of a Major League Baseball team, this thing goes to litigation, it goes to court, and it also could destroy any sort of spending or any operation that the Padres are holding for the future. You also may remember that before Seidler passed away, he gave out these massive contracts. You remember this? To Xander Bogaerts and Manny Machado and many other players that eventually are going to have to be paid. These contracts down the line, I mean, 10 years, $250, $300 million. And so how the wife would operate the team versus how the brothers would operate the team could be two very different things. It seems to me, at least from reading the tea leaves here, the brothers want to hold a little bit, let's say, less money up against the salary cap, and maybe the wife in this release saying that she wants to do something different. Who knows how this is going to end up tuning out? But if you're a Padres fan, you got to be a little scared as to which direction they end up going in the future. This is one of those remains to be seen. All right, last night, a funny moment for an NBA broadcaster, probably the best in the business, fair to say, or one of the best in the business, and Mike Breen, got to be a Hall of Fame announcer one day if he's not already in the Hall of Fame. At Madison Square Garden, was it, I believe, last night? They were showing the fans in the stands. You know how this works at an NBA game. You have like big celebrities. Yeah, Celebrity Row. They have it I didn't even know. They have it in Miami too, so I should have known that. And they show all the celebrities. One of the celebrities they showed, you may not be familiar with her, so I'll explain, is Susie Essman. Susie Essman is and was on a show called Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David, which aired on HBO for more than a decade. So they showed her on the screen, and Mike Breen said, "There is Susie Essman," but instead of saying from Curb Your Enthusiasm, he said from Pardon the Interruption, which is a show that airs every day, award-winning show, by the way, over on ESPN. Now, he quickly corrected himself, and he quickly said, "I made a mistake. I'm sorry for that." But just kind of funny here to think, what if Susie Essman was on Pardon the Interruption, right? Like, why not? Why not throw these celebrities on these other shows, mix and match, see what happens? I cannot, and if, by the way, I don't know what the rating would be for that show in terms of language is concerned, but Susie has been known to shake it up a little bit on Curb Your Enthusiasm. But anyway, Mike Breen, very, very candid, funny moment, and great apology from him on TV as well. This is why he's one of the best. That'll do it for our show today. Thanks again to Jacob Camenker from the USA Today. Also, thanks to Cody Roark from Mile High Sports, and thanks to Michael DeCourcy from Sporting News. As always, our director is Luke, and our producer is Frank. And coming up at 3 o'clock Eastern, Pharrell is back in the house, coast to coast, 3 o'clock, getting you ready for all the college basketball tonight, followed by Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m., in-game live game day at 8 o'clock, and then Gabe tonight, staying up all night and tweeting until 5 in the morning. Gabe is on Sports Rage tonight from 10 p.m. to 12 a.m. First thing I do in the morning sometimes is when I go on social media, I know Frank and I are getting ready for the show, I can always count on seeing like a 5 a.m. tweet from Gabe. And I'm always wondering, when does this guy sleep? I don't know. Hope you have a great rest of your day. See you back here tomorrow for our next edition of NewsWire.